The galaxy had always known peace, but peace had been synonymous with dominance for the Virith. The Virith were the galaxy's superpower, an unstoppable force who conquered or destroyed any civilization that posed a threat to their rule. For centuries, they had reigned without equal. Their technology was unmatched, their fleets endless, and their influence unchallenged. Every star system knew their name, every race feared them. But everything changed the day the Virith received a message from Earth. At first, Earth was a planet of no concern. A young species, still caught in the quagmire of internal conflict, Earth was considered primitive by galactic standards. Their telescopes could only glimpse the stars, their space travel was rudimentary at best, and their military, though advancing, was far from impressive. The Virith watched from a distance, assuming that, like countless species before them, Earth would eventually be wiped out by one of the universe's many predatory forces or destroyed by its own internal divisions. There was no reason to worry. But something about Earth's sudden advancement caught the Virith off guard. It wasn't just their technological leap, which had accelerated at an unprecedented rate, but their resilience. Earth's space program, once a joke, began to show incredible promise. The human race, after centuries of struggle, appeared to be growing at a speed far greater than any species the Virith had encountered before. In the span of a few decades, humanity had made strides that many species across the galaxy had taken centuries to achieve. They had cracked the code for sustainable space travel, mastered energy sources previously thought impossible, and developed a new generation of weapons capable of taking on entire fleets. The Virith first took note when Earth's deep space probes began to reach the outer systems at speeds previously unheard of for such a young civilization. The final blow to their dismissal came when Earth launched its first successful, large-scale satellite defense system, capable of intercepting and destroying incoming threats with pinpoint accuracy. This new technology had caught the Virith by surprise, especially when an unmanned scout ship, exploring the outer reaches of the system, was disabled by a single Earth missile that used this new defense technology. A simple probe, nothing more than an experimental design, had incapacitated an entire Virith ship. The humiliation was not lost on the Virith. Word of this incident spread quickly through the galaxy, reaching the highest ranks of the Virith. A race as advanced as they could hardly afford to let a species like humanity grow unchecked. And so, in the quiet shadows of their warships, the Virith Council met. They were unaccustomed to being challenged. The humans must be eradicated, one council member insisted. They are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Their technology could one day surpass our own. Zoreth, the Virith general, stood silent as the council debated, his mind already forming a plan. He had seen the potential in humanity. They were like no other species he had encountered. There was a spark within them, something that made them unpredictable and dangerous. And he, more than anyone, understood that kind of strength. The humans may not be ready yet, Zoreth finally said, his voice cold and calculating. But they are a worthy opponent, and they will be treated as such. The council fell silent, intrigued by his words. If we strike now, we can crush them before they gain further strength, Zoreth continued. But I suggest we do not simply wipe them out. Let us test them. Let them know their place. A challenge, if you will. With that, the Virith made their decision. The invasion of Earth would begin. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was unaware of the storm approaching. They had no idea that their unexpected technological growth was already drawing the attention of forces far beyond their wildest imaginings. Yet the human spirit, resilient, ever persistent, would soon prove that their place in the galaxy was not as a victim, but as a contender. Zoreth, the Virith general, stood at the head of a massive dark council chamber. The walls were lined with holographic projections of star systems, warships, and various galactic forces. The Virith Council was gathered in full force, their powerful, regal figures watching with calculated intensity. Across the table, their glowing eyes fixed on Zoreth, who had just made his proposal. "The humans must be dealt with immediately," Joreth stated, his voice carrying a chilling confidence. "We cannot allow them to continue to advance unchecked. They will eventually surpass us if left to their own devices." A murmuring wave of dissent rippled through the council. One member, a tall Vairith with silver skin, shook his head in disbelief. "Why waste our resources on such a primitive race?" he asked, his voice laced with condescension. "Humanity is no more dangerous than any of the other lesser species we've encountered. They are nothing. Let them play in the stars for a few more years. They'll never be able to challenge us." Zoreth's eyes narrowed, his posture unwavering as he responded. "You underestimate them. I have studied their behavior, their history. Humanity is unpredictable, and it is that unpredictability that makes them dangerous. They have the drive and determination to change the course of their destiny. They could very well become the one species capable of overthrowing our rule." A silence fell over the room as his words sank in. A few members of the council exchanged uncertain glances. The Vairith had long since conquered many galaxies, and their empire had been solid for centuries. They prided themselves on their superiority. The idea that this young, upstart species could threaten their control was unsettling. Finally, another council member, a tall Vairith with deep purple markings running down her face, spoke up. "Joreth speaks the truth. The humans have already begun to advance rapidly. We saw it with the destruction of our scout ship. A single strike from a primitive missile disabled an entire ship. How could that happen unless they had more than we anticipated?" Her words cut through the lingering doubts. The other council members nodded in agreement, understanding the gravity of the situation. Though the humans may not yet be a galactic superpower, they were showing signs of something extraordinary, something that could one day rise to challenge the Vairith. "We must act, but not without caution," Joreth said, his tone now commanding the room. "Rather than simply destroy them outright, I propose we test them. We will send a force to Earth, not to destroy them, but to challenge them, to provoke them into revealing the full extent of their capabilities. If they survive, they will know that they have earned their place among the stars." He paused, allowing the council to digest his words. This was not a typical Vairith approach. Their usual tactic was to destroy and assimilate, but Joreth knew that brute force alone would not guarantee their dominance over Earth. No, this required a different approach, a challenge that would push humanity to its limits. The room fell silent again. The council members looked at one another, considering the strategy laid out before them. It was a risky move, but in their minds, it could work. The Vairith were known for being merciless, and to show mercy to the humans might prove to be their undoing. Yet, Zoreth's suggestion offered something different, an opportunity to test this new species, to push them into a corner and see if they would fight back. Finally, the leader of the council spoke, his voice heavy with authority. "Very well, Joreth. You will proceed with your plan, but we will give you only one chance. If this test fails, the humans will be wiped out without hesitation. Do not fail us." Zoreth bowed his head in acknowledgement. "I will not fail." With that, the decision was made. The Vairith were coming to Earth. The galaxy's most fearsome force would soon test humanity's resolve. The humans, unaware of the danger lurking in their skies, would soon be forced to face the greatest challenge of their existence. On Earth, the news of the alien threat was still a distant murmur, a whisper in the winds of intergalactic space. But the day of reckoning was fast approaching, and humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Would they rise to the occasion, or would they crumble under the weight of an empire far beyond their own? Only time would tell. The day the Vairith fleet arrived was the day Earth's existence would change forever. The first sign came in the form of a shadow, a vast, dark shape appearing in Earth's orbit. It was a fleet unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Hundreds of enormous warships, their surfaces gleaming with an unnatural metallic sheen. Each ship was a fortress, a symbol of destruction. The human military scrambled to respond, sending jets and missiles into the sky, but it was clear from the start that their weapons were nothing more than flies against a wall. Within hours, the Virith unleashed their might. The first blow came at noon, as the enemy fleet fired a massive energy beam into the heart of Earth's largest city, obliterating entire skyscrapers and leaving a crater where once bustling streets had been. The destruction was swift and absolute. Earth's defenses were outclassed at every turn, their satellites disabled, their military systems hacked by the Virith's superior technology. Panic spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to coordinate, but their efforts were fragmented, caught off guard by an enemy so advanced, so lethal. Yet amidst the chaos, something remarkable began to happen. Humans, though terrified, did not fold under the weight of their destruction. The human spirit, stubborn and determined, ignited like a spark in a tinderbox. In underground bunkers and hidden bases, military leaders gathered, uniting their forces in a way humanity had never done before. It was clear. They were outgunned and outclassed, yet they were determined to fight for their home. Major cities had been wiped off the map, but survivors banded together, forming pockets of resistance. The human response was not one of fear, but of resolve. Across the world, messages were broadcasted through the remains of Earth's communication networks. From the rubble of devastated cities, human leaders stood tall, addressing their people with defiance. They would not surrender. They would not bow down to an empire that had never known defeat. This was their home, and they would fight for it. Unknown to the invaders, humanity's greatest weapon was already in the works. Earth's brightest minds, despite the chaos, had been preparing for this moment. Hidden in the mountains, underground labs had been working on a secret project for years. Project Titan, an energy weapon capable of disabling even the most advanced technologies, was now ready for deployment. It was their only hope. The first test of Project Titan came when Earth's military, armed with the new technology, launched an assault on a small group of Virith ships that had come too close to their new defense lines. The moment the Titan energy cannon fired, a shockwave of raw power shot through the skies, enveloping the enemy fleet. For a brief, terrifying moment, everything went silent. When the dust settled, the once invincible Virith ships were floating in space, their systems crippled, their weapons offline. The weapon had worked. This victory, though small, sent shockwaves through the Virith command. Zoreth, observing from his flagship, clenched his fists in frustration. He had expected resistance, but not like this. Humans, the species he had once dismissed as weak, were now showing a resolve and resourcefulness that could no longer be ignored. The Virith had underestimated them, and that mistake would cost them dearly. Earth's forces celebrated the small victory, but they knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The Virith were not so easily defeated. Zoreth, furious at the setback, immediately began planning his next move. He would not allow this rebellious species to continue to defy him. He would show them what true power looked like. Meanwhile, humanity's leaders, despite the odds, rallied their people. The message was clear. Earth was not finished. Not yet. They had found a crack in the Virith's armor. And now, they would exploit it. With the first battle won, humanity stood on the precipice of something larger than they had ever imagined. A new chapter was about to be written in the stars, and the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Would humanity rise to meet the challenge, or would they fall under the weight of the Virith's might? Only time would tell, but for the first time in centuries, there was a glimmer of hope in the darkest of skies. Zoreth's fleet had retreated, but the victory had come at a cost. Humanity had shown that it could fight back, but Earth's defenses were still far from a match for the full force of the Virith. For now, they had gained a moment of respite, but this was only the beginning. Humanity's leaders understood the stakes. The battle had only just begun. The global response to the invasion was unlike anything the Virith had anticipated. Nations that had once been divided by borders and ideologies now stood united. The United Nations, which had once been a patchwork of fragmented cooperation, had become the central organizing force for humanity's defense. A new world government, born from the ashes of chaos, began to take shape. National pride had faded into the background, replaced by a singular, collective identity: Earth. The human military, once fragmented, now coordinated under a single unified command. Soldiers from every corner of the world stood side by side, trained and prepared to defend their planet. Yet even with this new unity, Earth's forces knew they could not win by simply matching the Virith's strength. The Virith's weaponry, technology, and fleets were still far superior, and any direct confrontation would likely end in defeat. Humanity would need to rely on more than sheer power to survive. While Earth's generals and military strategists worked tirelessly to defend their territories, the true brilliance of humanity's response lay in its ability to adapt. As Jorath continued to regroup, preparing for his next strike, Earth's scientists, engineers, and inventors were already at work, thinking outside the box to level the playing field. They knew they needed to get creative. Humanity's engineers began to reverse engineer captured Virith technology. It wasn't easy, and it was dangerous work. The Virith's advanced systems were unlike anything Earth had ever seen, and to replicate them required not only a deep understanding of their technology, but also the courage to experiment. Yet Earth's scientists had a secret advantage: their ingenuity. They might not have the advanced history of the Virith, but their ability to improvise, to learn on the fly, had already proven itself time and time again. One of the first breakthroughs came when Earth's engineers managed to duplicate the Virith's energy shield technology. This was no small feat, as the shields were designed to withstand an enormous amount of force, making them nearly impenetrable to conventional weapons. The new shield technology allowed Earth's forces to protect their cities and bases more effectively, buying them crucial time to plan their next steps. However, the shield wasn't perfect. Earth's version was still a work in progress, and it was vulnerable in certain situations. It was, however, a start. Meanwhile, Earth's intelligence services were working around the clock to uncover any weaknesses in the Virith strategy. They knew that their enemy's strength was rooted in its advanced technology, but technology alone couldn't ensure victory. Even the most powerful armies could be undermined with the right information. The global resistance grew stronger every day, with humanity's elite military forces moving to engage the Virith in unexpected ways. Rather than fighting head-on, Earth's forces began using guerrilla tactics, setting traps and sabotage operations against the Virith's supply lines. These skirmishes were small but effective, forcing the Virith to stretch their resources thin and disrupting their operations. One of humanity's greatest strategies lay in their adaptability. With every loss, they learned, and with every victory, they grew bolder. They didn't fight like the Virith. They fought like themselves, leveraging their numbers, creativity, and unyielding determination to hit back at the alien invaders. The Virith, who had once believed humanity to be nothing more than an insignificant species, were now learning a hard truth: Earth was not so easily defeated. Jorath, surveying the battlefield, clenched his fists in frustration. His forces, though powerful, were facing an enemy they hadn't prepared for, an enemy that refused to be crushed. Humanity's survival instinct had kicked into full gear, and now Earth was not just fighting for its survival, it was fighting to prove that it belonged in the stars. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome was uncertain. But one thing was becoming clear: humanity's fight was just beginning, and they would not back down without a struggle. As Jorath prepared his next attack, humanity's leadership was already plotting their response, developing new strategies and weapons, all with one goal in mind: survival. Earth's greatest strength lay in its ability to learn and adapt. And it was about to show the galaxy what that truly meant. The Virith, despite their overwhelming technological advantage, had underestimated one crucial factor: humanity's ability to adapt. Every setback for Earth brought a new burst of creativity and resolve. As Earth's forces continued to regroup and refine their tactics, the Virith's confidence began to wane. The invaders, who had once seen Earth as an easy conquest, were now facing a foe unlike any they had encountered before. Jorath stood on the command deck of his flagship, staring out at the holographic projections of Earth's orbit. His eyes were narrow, his mind racing. The humans had proven more resilient than anticipated. Their counterattacks were increasingly effective, and their defenses, though not as advanced as the Virith's, were now equipped with stolen technology. Worse, the human military had begun to show signs of coordination and strategy that rivaled the galaxy's finest. He was forced to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth. Humanity had become a worthy adversary. For the first time in his career, Jorath could not predict their next move. The humans had begun to fight with a determination that, in Jorath's experience, only the most dangerous of enemies possessed. But the Virith were not without options. The decision had been made. Earth's main cities were to be targeted, wiped off the map to force humanity into submission. Jorath hoped that with a swift, brutal strike, the humans would understand the cost of defying the Virith. They would either bow or perish. Meanwhile, Earth's leadership knew that the coming attack would be their greatest test yet. The Virith had made it clear they would stop at nothing to break Earth's resistance. The time for improvisation was coming to an end. They needed to take a bold step. Humanity's new strategy was centered around the one thing the Virith hadn't anticipated: their ability to unite. The once fragmented nations of Earth were now an organized, singular force, collaborating in ways that were unheard of before the invasion. With the Virith fleet poised to strike, Earth's leaders made an unprecedented decision. In a joint effort, they constructed a new superweapon, Project Prometheus, a weapon designed to use a blend of advanced energy manipulation and human ingenuity to disrupt the very core of the Virith fleet. Unlike the Titan energy cannon, which had proven effective in smaller-scale battles, Prometheus was a weapon of mass destruction that could hit the Virith fleet at the heart of their power. The Virith underestimated the humans' determination, but they also underestimated the scale of humanity's ambition. Project Prometheus was designed to do what no one thought was possible: cripple the Virith's command ship. If the humans could manage to destroy it, the Virith's control over their fleet would falter, possibly causing the entire invasion to collapse. The plan was a gamble. The technology behind Prometheus was still in its infancy, and there was a real risk it would fail. But Earth's leaders had no choice. The war was reaching its peak, and it would take something extraordinary to turn the tide in their favor. As the final components of Prometheus were being installed on Earth's largest orbital station, Earth's military leaders prepared for the final confrontation. They had studied the Virith tactics, learned from their past mistakes, and now, armed with their new weapon and their unwavering resolve, they were ready for the Virith's next assault. The Virith were coming, their fleet growing larger as they prepared to strike Earth's largest cities in one final devastating blow. Jorath believed this would be the end. He believed that humanity would finally submit to Virith's superiority, just as countless species had before them. What Jorath did not know, however, was that Earth was ready. The humans had already learned from their previous encounters, and despite the overwhelming odds, had developed a weapon powerful enough to challenge the Virith's might. Earth was no longer just a fledgling species in the cosmos. It was now a force to be reckoned with. As the countdown to the Virith's next attack began, both sides knew that the outcome of this battle would determine the fate of Earth and its place in the galaxy. For humanity, the stakes had never been higher. The next few days would decide everything. Would Earth's resistance hold, or would the Virith's power crush them once and for all? In the silence before the storm, both sides braced themselves for the ultimate clash. The final confrontation loomed over Earth like a dark storm cloud. The Virith fleet was massive, its warships preparing for their deadly assault on Earth's largest cities. Jorath stood aboard his flagship, watching the projections of Earth's surface, calculating the best course of action for the upcoming invasion. His strategy had been simple: destroy Earth's most critical locations, and break the will of its people. The Vy'rith had always relied on brute strength, and the humans were no different from the countless species they had crushed before. But this time, something felt different. Joreth couldn't shake the unease growing in the pit of his stomach. The humans had proven resourceful, resilient in ways he hadn't predicted. The reports of Project Prometheus only fueled his anxiety. If it worked, it could cripple his fleet. He knew that the humans had something to fight for, something more than just survival. Their spirit was unbreakable, and that was the true threat. On Earth, the unified forces of humanity were ready. For the past several weeks, every country had mobilized, contributing every resource available to the cause. Every civilian had become part of the effort, whether by working in factories, preparing food for soldiers, or helping to develop new technologies to protect their cities. Humanity's unity was the backbone of their resistance, and they stood together, prepared for the battle of their lives. The orbital stations had been fully equipped with Prometheus. The weapon's energy core hummed softly, awaiting the command to unleash its devastating power. The humans knew that if they failed to take down the Vy'rith flagship, all hope would be lost. Their superweapon was their final chance, and they intended to make every moment count. As the Vy'rith fleet approached, Earth's forces scrambled to deploy their newly acquired shields and weapons. The sky above Earth was filled with the haunting sight of warships descending, blotting out the stars. The first wave of the invasion struck as predicted, targeting Earth's largest cities: New York, London, Tokyo. Each city was hit with an unrelenting barrage of energy weapons, reducing towering skyscrapers to rubble in mere seconds. Yet the human response was immediate. Earth's military launched every fighter, missile, and satellite they could muster to engage the incoming fleet. But it wasn't enough. The Vy'rith's firepower was too great. As the invasion continued, Earth's defenses began to crumble. Humanity's forces were forced into defensive positions, retreating into underground bunkers, hoping for a breakthrough. The fight seemed hopeless as one by one, Earth's cities fell. Then, just as the Vy'rith were preparing for their final strike, the tide of the battle shifted. From the silence of space, Project Prometheus was unleashed. A massive energy pulse shot out from Earth's orbital station, striking the lead Vy'rith flagship with incredible force. The shockwave rippled through the fleet, knocking out communications and disrupting the Vy'rith's ability to coordinate their attack. Zoreth's flagship, the largest of the Vy'rith warships, shuddered under the intense blast. Its shields buckled, and sections of the ship's hull began to fracture. Alarms blared, and the command bridge filled with chaos as the Vy'rith scrambled to regain control. For the first time in Joreth's long career, he found himself facing an enemy that had managed to land a decisive blow. The humans weren't finished yet. As the Vy'rith struggled to stabilize their flagship, Earth's remaining fighters rallied for their final push. Armed with new technologies and guided by human ingenuity, they launched a series of coordinated attacks on the Vy'rith's vulnerable fleet. The combined assault from Earth's forces and the disabling effect of Prometheus gave humanity the opening they needed. Zoreth's fleet, now disoriented and reeling from the unexpected assault, struggled to respond. The humans had outmaneuvered them, exploiting their weakness and using the opportunity to turn the tide. The Vy'rith ships, once invincible, were now targets for humanity's renewed offensive. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for victory. As the battle raged in space, Zoreth's flagship drifted, its systems failing, its once imposing presence now a symbol of the Vy'rith's faltering control. For all their technological might, the Vy'rith had not accounted for the one thing humanity possessed in abundance: determination. On Earth, as the skies darkened and the destruction of the cities reached its peak, the world held its breath. The fate of the planet rested on the outcome of this decisive battle. Would the Vy'rith crush humanity, or would Earth's fight for survival prove too strong for the Empire to overcome? The moment of truth had arrived. Both sides, battered and bruised, knew that this battle would determine the future of the galaxy. Would the humans continue their rise, or would the Virith once again assert their dominance over all? Only time would reveal the true cost of this war, and whether Earth could emerge victorious. The battle above Earth raged on, and the Virith were losing ground. Joreth stood at the helm of his flagship, now barely holding together. The once proud vessel was a shell of its former self, a symbol of an empire teetering on the brink of defeat. Around him, the atmosphere in the command center had shifted from controlled urgency to frantic chaos. The Virith were not accustomed to being on the defensive, and it was clear that the humans were not only holding their own, they were winning. Earth's forces had adapted quickly. Every attack they launched, every strategic move they made, seemed to land precisely where it hurt the most. The Virith's technological superiority, which had once been a guarantee of victory, was being dismantled by the creativity and resilience of humanity. Prometheus, the weapon Earth had developed, had crippled the Virith flagship, sending shockwaves through the invaders' ranks. And the humans were not stopping there. They had evolved into a formidable fighting force, their soldiers, fighters, and scientists all united in one common cause: to protect their home. Zoreth's mind raced. He had been wrong. He had thought the humans would break under pressure, crumble before the might of the Virith Empire. Instead, they had proven to be not just capable of resistance, but of orchestrating a counterattack that had driven his fleet to the edge of collapse. Joreth could feel the weight of failure closing in on him. For the first time in his life, he questioned his certainty, his belief that the Virith were invincible. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity's fight was reaching its peak. The forces in orbit were working in unison with those on the ground. Earth's remaining defenses, though battered, had proven resilient enough to slow the Virith assault. What had once been a disorganized collection of military factions was now a unified force, working together with a singular purpose. The human resistance, fueled by desperation and the need to survive, had become a force of nature. General Rachel Carter, leading the human defense from the underground command center in the ruins of Washington, D.C., watched as the Virith fleet continued to falter. The tide had shifted, but they couldn't stop now. "We have one shot at this," she said to her team, her voice firm but steady. "If we don't end this now, they'll regroup and come back stronger. We can't let them have that chance." The plan was set. Earth's remaining orbital stations, now fully armed and with the last of humanity's experimental weapons, were about to make their final stand. It wasn't just about holding the Virith off anymore. It was about driving them from Earth entirely. They had the opportunity, and they weren't going to waste it. With Joreth's flagship struggling to stay intact, Earth's forces made their move. Fighters launched in waves, intercepting Virith ships with a precision that had been unthinkable just weeks before. The human fleet, once outclassed, now took the offensive, using every weapon at their disposal to hammer away at the alien fleet. Each victory, each enemy ship disabled, sent a message. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were a power to be reckoned with. Zoreth, standing on the bridge of his damaged flagship, could see his fleet unraveling. His pride, his empire, was crumbling. It was clear now that the humans would not be so easily defeated. Desperation grew within him, and in his mind, the only option left was to make one final desperate move. Earth's destruction might still be possible, but he would have to sacrifice everything to do it. But as Joreth issued orders for the fleet to make a last-ditch effort to regroup, a voice interrupted him. The ship's communications officer turned to him, wide-eyed. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Zoreth's gaze narrowed. A human transmission. What were they trying to do now? The officer hesitated but then activated the message. The face that appeared on the screen was not one of an ambassador or negotiator. It was General Rachel Carter. She spoke with cold, unwavering certainty. "Joreth," she said, "you've lost. Your empire is falling. Your fleet is falling apart. You've underestimated us for the last time. If you surrender now, We will let you leave. If you don't, we will destroy your fleet. The choice is yours. But know this, you will not conquer Earth." The transmission ended, leaving only the silence of space behind it. Zoreth stood still for a moment, the weight of those words hanging in the air. He had come to Earth expecting to crush the human spirit, to bend them to the will of the Vy'rth Empire. Instead, he was left facing a choice he had never expected: surrender or annihilation. The Vy'rth general was at a crossroads, and for the first time in his career, he found himself unsure of what to do next. The silence that followed General Rachel Carter's transmission was deafening. Zoreth stood frozen on the command deck, staring at the empty screen where the human general's face had once been. His mind raced, processing the weight of the decision before him. Surrender. It was unthinkable. The Vy'rth had never surrendered, not once in their entire history. Yet, humanity had done the unimaginable. They had fought back, and they were winning. His flagship was barely functional. Half of his fleet was destroyed or disabled, and Earth's forces were closing in for the kill. The once unassailable might of the Vy'rth was now in tatters, scattered and vulnerable. For the first time in his life, Zoreth could feel the very fabric of his empire slipping away. On the surface, Zoreth's pride screamed against the idea of surrender. To admit defeat to the humans would be a disgrace beyond measure. It would be a stain on the Vy'rth legacy, a legacy built on domination and conquest. He had led his fleet to Earth, confident in the inevitable victory. But now, victory seemed like a distant dream. The humans had shown something his species had never understood: an unyielding will, a refusal to bow, even in the face of annihilation. Meanwhile, on Earth, the tide was shifting dramatically. General Carter and her team, having launched their final offensive, watched in real time as the Vy'rth fleet began to crumble. The warships were turning, retreating, or simply falling apart under the pressure of Earth's combined forces. For the first time in weeks, Carter allowed herself a small, cautious smile. They had done it. Against all odds, they had forced the Vy'rth to the brink of surrender. But she knew the Vy'rth leader wouldn't give up so easily. Zoreth was a warrior, a conqueror. He would never back down without one final push. The question was whether he would choose to continue the fight and risk total annihilation, or bow to the human strength and accept that his empire had met its match. In the depths of space, aboard the bridge of Zoreth's battered flagship, the general made his decision. He turned to his officers, their faces pale, all of them waiting for his command. The decision weighed heavily on his shoulders. "We've lost," Zoreth finally muttered, his voice cold, devoid of emotion. "Prepare to send a message to Earth. I will not destroy my fleet for pride." The officers exchanged stunned looks. The unthinkable had just happened. The great Zoreth, the unrelenting commander of the Vy'rth, was ready to concede. With a sharp motion, Zoreth ordered the communications officer to open a channel to Earth. The message went through, a signal that was met with the calm, measured voice of General Carter. "Zoreth," she said, her voice unwavering, "you have chosen wisely. Surrendering your fleet is the only option left to you." Zoreth's response was heavy with finality. "You are right, General. The Vy'rth will not fight again. My fleet will stand down. I offer no more destruction. But know this, your victory is hard won. We will leave Earth, but the galaxy will remember this." "Let them remember," Carter replied. "The galaxy may have underestimated us, but Earth has shown what it means to fight for our home. This is not the end of our story. It's just the beginning." The message ended, and Zoreth's fleet began to slowly withdraw, no longer a conquering force, but a defeated one. Earth had won. And with that victory, a new chapter in history was written. On Earth, as the news spread, the world erupted in celebration. It wasn't just the military that had triumphed, it was humanity as a whole. For every person who had stood firm, for every life that had been lost in the struggle, Earth had proven that it could stand against any force in the galaxy. They had beaten the impossible. But even as Earth celebrated, General Carter knew that this war had taught them something valuable. They were no longer just survivors in the vast universe. They were a force capable of shaping their own destiny, and they would never again be overlooked or underestimated. As the Virith fleet retreated into the darkness of space, humanity looked to the stars with a newfound confidence. The galaxy had been put on notice. Earth was no longer a pawn, it was a player, and the story of humanity's rise had only just begun.